So this month, Xbox makes it even easier for you to play keyboard and mouse style games and map them to controllers. And this is going to continue the discussion about the concept of Xbox, especially as it relates to World of Warcraft, a franchise that they now own, and its long absence from the console space. But we're going to dive into the details. So hello everyone and welcome to the channel. My name is Brian. If you happen to be new around here, if you're part of the returning subscriber base, thank you so much for coming back and checking out today's video. I'm going to give you guys my dev perspective on what it would take to get World of Warcraft onto an Xbox. And ultimately, my hope is that if they ever do decide to go down this road, that we would also see it come to PlayStation as well, because more players are better, especially when it comes to an MMORPG. Doesn't mean that the players themselves are better, and that is always going to be a cultural shock with any game, especially a game as established as World of Warcraft is within the community. But let's go ahead and dive into the information, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about what we're going to talk about today in the comments, or you can always hit me up on Discord or Twitter as well, or X, whatever you want to call that platform. It is what it is. So the news kicks off today with Tom Warren tweeting out, Xbox is making it easier to play keyboard-focused games with the controller. The Xbox October update is rolling out with the ability to map single keys or sequences to buttons on an Xbox Elite Series 2 adaptive controllers. And there's a slash here, so if we dive into the articles themselves, we learn a little bit more. Xbox's latest update adds a way to map controller buttons to keyboard keys. If you have the Xbox Elite Series Controller Series 2 and the Xbox Adaptive Controller, notice the keyword "and" in the sentence, you can now assign specific keyboard keys to buttons on your controller. This would make it easier to play games that have limited controller support or just have a lot of different controls. The article goes on to say, while you can also map as many modifier keys like Control, Shift, and Alt and Windows to a single controller button, you can only include one non-modifier key, for example, C, with them. But that does enable you to map entire sequences like Control-Shift-C to a single button. And you can read more about their controller to keyboard mapping on and how to use it on the Xbox's website. So this is where obviously there's going to be some pushback to having WoW on consoles. I would wonder though if that would be a benefit overall to the life of the game. At some point here in the near future, World of Warcraft will be one of the primary MMORPGs that is not featured on a console. We're seeing such movement, obviously with Final Fantasy XIV coming to the Xbox, but beyond Final Fantasy XIV, Still Blue Protocol, Throne of Liberty, and honestly, I won't be surprised when they announce that New World's coming to consoles. I do think that is a part of their roadmap, and we might see controller support for that game officially much sooner, because in the last dev Q&A, they had an Xbox controller in the background. We'll have to take that however we want to take that. But when I talked about this over on X, this is what you guys had to say. The Unseen says, I really want to bring WoW to Xbox. That would make my dream come true. Stoic PJ follows us up. Well, with the upcoming Microsoft update to the Xbox accessories, all that allows custom mapping to the Elite Series controller is what makes perfect sense. Now, Zal says, woo, we can ruin Xbox too. And that's comes down into the cultural discussion about this. And then finally, and this is really where the discussion and my developer experience will help out, Tyler tweets this out. My only issue with this is that fundamentally the game is not designed for consoles like Final Fantasy XIV. Now in WoW, mass use of add-ons is basically required, and fights are designed around having add-ons installed. There would need to be a major restructuring to the game. And then referencing an interview with Asmongold talking about this very thing, especially as it relates to add-ons. Here's a couple of quotes from that article. When asked about the continually increasing emphasis of add-ons and PvE content during his interview with Asmongold, game director Ian Halakostas had this to say, acknowledging a shift from informational to computational add-ons, which solve encounter mechanics for players automatically, which has become more difficult to design around. While it's something that they want to solve, the intent isn't to fully break mods that provide buffs and debuff tracking or rotation helping, though the new customizable UI update incorporates many of these elements, or at least reduce the need for third-party add-ons. Going on to say, do we want you to feel like you have to download third-party add-ons to succeed in this game? Nope. None of us feels that is good. Over the years, we've tried to incorporate aspects of that functionality in our base UI. Even sometimes it's just design, making telegraphs better, or using the energy bars of the bosses, mana bars, or other ways of signaling, hey, when this bar fills up, a huge ability is going to happen. So you don't need a timer to let you know how to prepare for it. Information is something we want to continue to improve and provide in our game. I think that's a core function of the encounter design. And so this is where things are going to be a challenge. Now, that's not to say that the work hasn't already being made. Over the last 2 expansions, we've seen more and more controller support added into the base of this game, thus making it easier and more accessible to a wide range of players. That's not to say the game is ready for consoles, and that's not to say consoles would support mods, with the exception of Xbox, because they've done so before. And this is where I think Xbox's collaboration with Bethesda, Xbox's kind of design for their ecosystem, and a kind of a content creator driven economy could end up being kind of the key difference here. Now, let's not beat around the bush. The amount of work to do something like this is astronomical. This is going to be a massive development effort, and that development time is going to have to be pulled from other resources. So I don't know if the demand truly is there, but it will feel weird with enough time, even if WoW is the biggest or still not, like maybe the second. Who knows what the overall population size of the game is anymore, but opening it up to Xbox, I think, is something that just makes strategic sense. I would, again, hope for PlayStation, but we've seen PlayStation push back on add-ons. But in terms of the development design, if I was leading the way, if I was in charge of the team with the amount of work, it really all comes down to, is World of Warcraft going to be another 20-year game? Are we going to be talking about and playing this version, even though it won't be the same, here in 20 years? And they've kind of signaled that that is a huge possibility. Even Square Enix has talked about that with Final Fantasy XI. They'd love for it to be around in another 20 years, which is just an astronomical amount of time, no matter which way you slice it. What it all ends up boiling down to, from my perspective here, is if I was in charge, I would literally just make what I would call WoW 3. WoW 3 being the third iteration of, you have Classic, you have Retail, and then a new version of WoW that incorporates many of the things that they were never able to do, but also puts a new starting point for this franchise forward into the universe, into the world. Now, who knows what will happen if that is something that's a part of their plan, but I think about it in terms of just the volume of content and the life of the game itself. Now, ultimately, if they were going to do something like that, I wouldn't expect to see that happen for at least several more years in terms of an announcement, unless they've been secretly working on it for the last decade in and of itself, which then bodes the question, aren't they just working on the current version of WoW? So it's a hard position to be in, and these changes that they're introducing with the October update, I think, pave a way. Obviously, you would have to purchase the adaptive controller. There'd have to be a huge design, and that's not going to be something they're going to want to have as a personal requirement. Obviously, the Elite Series 2 is another roadblock, so you'd be looking at a much deeper investment, where the cheaper investment at that point is to go pick up the game and play it on PC. I think what I'm going to be looking for in terms of the news and how Xbox decides to roll with this, and really kind of to signal what they're anticipating, is World of Warcraft added some way, shape, or form into the Xbox Game Pass PC ecosystem? Will we see Battle.net elevated and kind of replace the existing Xbox app, or are they going to just kind of maintain that as its own store in the long run? And then finally, will they allow for World of Warcraft to run on services like GeForce Now? I think that would be something really interesting to see, and open up the game to a lot more players when they can not have to worry about those kind of things. But GeForce Now would benefit from having more and more controller support. And this isn't to say to the hardcore community that is focusing in on add-ons and focusing in on that experience, that your console experience is going to match up tier to tier, feature to feature with that of the PC experience. Even though when you look at how Final Fantasy XIV was designed and developed, you can and people do raid at the highest level on a console. WoW, I think, is going to have some major roadblocks, and ultimately it could end up being something that's kind of a more casually focused game. But again, then I have to come back to, why not just say WoW 3? Why not just take the game in and of itself and say, you know what, that's been 20 years. We're going to focus in on building a franchise for the next 20 years. And that's something they get to do with Diablo. That's something they get to do with their other franchises. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Would you want to see something brand new from the World of Warcraft team that then incorporates console? Because it's going to feel weird, again, in 5 to 10 years when the MMOs that people are playing and talking about are all on consoles and the king of the MMO is still not accessible to a wide range of new players and younger demographics, which I think from a generational perspective are the keys to success when it comes to winning the next generation of these devices. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning into the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully if I earned it, you hit that like button, you subscribe if you want more content in your feed. Also, if you guys are still here and you haven't done so already, the top link is for my Instagram challenge, trying to get to over 1,000 followers by the end of this year, coming up on 200. So thank you guys so much for that support. Every day it just gets a little bit higher. So thank you if you guys have hit that follow button. And if you haven't yet and you do use Instagram, that would be a huge help to me and my comedy career. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.